Hi everyone, just want to preface this by saying that this debate was recorded and streamed on Spoken Juke's Twitch channel, so you'll find it in the description. I hope you enjoy it. The debate is completely unedited, so it's quite long because we talk about a lot of things. I hope you appreciate it and have a good watch.
Are you there?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. I can also hear you perfectly.
Awesome. All right, welcome in. Feel free to introduce yourself and then let everybody know what it is we're going to be debating.
Well, hello everyone. My name is Landa. I go by Shiha, and I'm a mixed survival killer player. I have more than 3,000 hours in the game. I think my DBD stat are literally 45, 55% for both sides. And when I saw your tweets, I disagree with three things. Three main things is that you had the first point saying camping, tunneling, Swift, BMing, and I think Bully Squad are not toxic. Well, I mostly agree with this. I think that some case of Bully Squad and BMing are toxic in the game, even though you said I listened to all the previous debates. That was very interesting to listen to all the other people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think some case of BMing and Bully Squad can be considered toxic, but we'll come back to that later.
Okay.
I also don't agree that DBD is not suicidal. I think it is for multiple reasons that I will also come back to that later. And I think some crutch perks, same to the same person, I think we had a misunderstanding as well. Some crutch perks are a problem in DBD. It depends on which perks and it depends on how exactly which side and how exactly they are stacked together, and it depends on a lot of things. I like to say that DBD is a too wide and too deep game to just have black and white. You always have a big gray area where you can't just say this is yes, this is no. You always have so many different variable and conditions where you can't just say this is this and it's always true. This is what I like to believe, which is why when I say I disagree, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily wrong. It just means that I disagree, but so most of the time, based on my experience, I think that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I kind of messed up with the crutch perk wording, and I think that let's start with the other ones first. So if you want, we can start with Swift Bully Squads, the toxicity thing. You could tell me why or when you think they are, or sorry, not Swifts, Bully Squads and BMing, and when you would consider them to be toxic.
Yes, because your whole point was including camping, tunneling, and Swift. I think those are not toxic. I agree with you. This is not in the question.
Okay.
What I disagree is bully squads and BMing in certain case.
Okay.
I completely agree that crouching repeatedly or clicking flashlight is not toxic. That's like BMing, but it's like fair play. That's part of the game.
Okay.
It's literally the same way. For example, a footballer will like trash talk an opponent or
Yep.
like someone from the other team.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's not toxic. It's just part of the game.
Yep.
It for me, it's part of the game. It's fair play. That's fine. What I consider toxic is if the player loading into the game with the intention to just ruin the other side gameplay and prevent them from playing the game. I have two scenarios where I can think that fill those conditions. First one is, for example, a killer literally just slugging someone and staying at the body. They just completely prevent the player from playing, and they literally just prevent anyone from picking up or coming. For example, Boba or Billy. Boba or Billy standing over your body, unless you have Unbreakable, and even then you are just buying some time. It are just preventing you from playing the game because no one can come pick you. And the second scenario is on certain map. That was more common before the map of functions. Sorry, is that survivors on certain map putting you in lose-lose situation where you can never win. You talk about that already. It's a kind of survivor, that bring exponential, saboteur, background player, flip-flop, or whatever pack, to just put you in lose-lose situation and to force you to slug. Well, I agree that most of the time, if you know to play, it's like easy wins. They give you easy snowball potential. I also don't think that it make it less toxic because in the end, they come into the game to just make you feel miserable. And while you win the game most of the time, where you're gonna end up with 3 kills, 4 kills because they just throw themselves at you, the game is just the whole time frustrating and you have a bad test afterward. Even if you win, it doesn't feel like a win because it feels like a struggle the whole time. So that's the two scenarios where I will say the BMing and the bully squad, if I may say, are toxic. Every other scenario, like crouching or teabagging or staying at the gate for some reason, is not toxic. It's part of the game.
Yeah, so what I would say is I agree with the very first thing that you said when it comes to if you go into the match with the pure intention of I want to make the other side miserable and that is your goal and intention, that is what is inherently toxic in my opinion is the intent. I think, for example, if you have 4 friends in a Swift that are having some drinks, having a laugh, just goofing around, and they're like, "Oh, let's go sabo some hooks." Like, I don't want to do gens. That's boring. I just want to go sabo hooks and save each other and that. But like, they're not specifically thinking like, "Oh, let's make the killer miserable." Like, I love going for sabos. I love going for flashbang saves. Me personally, I never do it with the intention to make the other person miserable. It's just very satisfying for me to get sabo plays and save my teammates and to go for those plays. And I did it in a duo Swift the other day with another streamer named Joey. We were just going for head-on blast mine plays, goofing around, and it was super fun. And a lot of the killers loved it afterwards, and we had some really fun, goofy moments. I think it all boils down to intent, both before and after the match. If survivors or killers do these things, and then afterwards they're like, haha, I hope you had a miserable game, or haha, you suck, loser, then you know that that was their intention. They were being toxic. They're trying to be rude to you. But I don't think that the gameplay itself is inherently toxic unless the intent is there. I will say when it comes to like slugging somebody, downing somebody, and just leaving them on the ground and not letting them get up, and that's all you do, I mean, that's kind of pretty clear cut that that's probably what you're trying to do. I don't really see any other purpose to just stand over somebody and let them bleed out. I think that's the best, closest example to just sheer gameplay leaning towards the toxic, but yeah, I don't think like Sabo or background player, I don't think any of that stuff is toxic to do unless you know the intent is there. That's the only time that I would say that it's toxic.
So while I agree that you said it like background player Sabo is not toxic itself, and I myself love those plays as well, I think the only scenario where it can be considered toxic is that all the 4 survivors are together. They don't want to do gens at all. They don't want to progress the game at all. And the only thing they want to do is make the game as long as possible by just repeatedly saving themselves, making the killer just in lose, constantly having lose-lose situation with exponential. You have 2 hook sabo. In most of the map, the killer cannot hook, is forced to slug. If the exponential is on, like, for example, take Midwich. In a lot of spots in Midwich, if you don't have the basement, Sabo 2 hooks, you have exponential in the, the central area that can cover a corner of the map. Most of the time, it's literally unhookable for the killer, so it's forced to slug, and then people can pick themselves up with exponential. In this situation, if the survivors are literally just here to force the killer to pick them up and get saved, get slugged everyone, and just get pick themselves up, I think that's toxic because they're literally just here to make the game as long and as frustrating as possible for the killer. But again, that you said it, that part of the intent, you can't really tell, but that's the only type of gameplay that I will consider toxic because that's not the regular gameplay. It's like before people, that another example I like to take is before the knockout change. For some people that don't know, knockout used to hide people's aura when they were on the ground, when you were further than 16 meters. Obviously, when people were on comms, that perk was kind of bad because you could just tell your friend, hey, I'm done at shack, come pick me up. But in solo queue, that was hell, especially on indoors map. So some killers will just take this spec and 4-man slug to bleed out. I don't think slugging itself is toxic. I think that going into the game to just bleed out everyone with no hooks, with just standing there waiting to everyone to bleed out, is kind of toxic. Now the pack got changed, it doesn't really happen anymore, especially with the abandoned features. But that's kind of the same scenario for each side, Killers wanting to just bleed you out so you don't participate in gameplay is not really the same, but the same intention of survivor not wanting you to take part into gameplay because they just force you to lose. No matter what you do, you lose, because if you pick up 2 hooks as about, you can't hook. If you don't, they pick themselves up with exponential. So you always lose whatever you do. That's
I
just
don't
the
know.
two gameplay I think that are toxic.
Two things. I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's comparable because if you're a survivor, or sorry, if you're a killer with all 4 survivors slugged out and you're just standing there, like they're not doing anything. Everybody is just sitting there waiting for 4 minutes doing nothing, as opposed to survivors. If they're going for Sabo plays or going for background player plays, like you are actively trying to do something. You're trying to make plays happen, and I don't think that those are comparable. And the only I would say that even if you go into a match and you don't care about doing the gens and you know full on that you're going to die, but you just want to do Sabo plays, to me, I don't think that that's inherently a toxic thing because I've had that mentality many times when I've played with friends and stuff in this game where, because I mean, that's genuinely how I play the game all the time. And it's like when I play solo queue or whatever, I don't care if I escape. I play for the fun of the match, and I like going for those kind of plays. And a lot of times background player or Sabo plays, those plays can be tricky to pull off, but again, very satisfying when you do pull them off, especially I'm sure when you're in a Swift with friends laughing again to say you're having some drinks and you're goofing around like, oh god, we got the Sabo, let's go, and then but you don't care if you die because you're just there for goofing around. And as primarily a killer main, the way I see it is that while yes, it can be frustrating and annoying, if the survivors are just doing that, and as soon as you catch on to it and you know that they're not even doing gens, it becomes a very easy and predictable match to deal with. And I don't think that people wanting to go for silly plays with the intention to lose anyway is necessarily a toxic thing or means that they want you to have a miserable time, because going for those plays in general can just be satisfying and fun outside of just wanting the killer to be miserable, because I love doing that stuff and I never do it for that reason. So that's where I'm coming from, is if I can do that stuff and have fun and not have that intention, then I believe that other people can do the same thing. I can't just assume everybody's intentions when I know my intentions would be good. So I shouldn't assume that everybody else's intentions doing it to me are negative and they want me to have a bad match, because if it was me in their shoes, I wouldn't be wanting me to have a bad match. I would be just goofing around being like, I don't care if I die. I just want to go for some fun plays. So again, it all has to do with intention and assuming intent, which assuming intent can get hairy because that's how you can set yourself up to be tilted and in a bad headspace if you're assuming the other side's intentions.
Yeah, sorry. That's actually a very good point.
No, you're good.
So I agree with all you said, and I know, how can I say, assuming people's intention is already not a good thing. You just said it, but I still think that you experience, and I have the same experience as well. You going for silly plays is totally not wanting to make the killer like have a frustrating time. But I'm pretty sure that in most of the game you've done this. You still go for gens. You still go for you don't go for gen at all.
No,
just saves.
Absolutely. There's been games where I won't touch a gen. I will just. I mean, I'll if I get on a gen, it's only so I can get my flashbang, and then I'm running around getting flashbang sabos. Like there's been numerous games where I'm like, I mean, it's when you're somebody like who plays the game a lot, like the most boring thing in the game is gens. Like you sit on it for 90 seconds and hit skill checks. It's so boring. So every once in a while, you just want to throw on a sabo or a save build and just run around and go for crazy plays, probably die in the process, but just have fun doing it. I do it all the time because, man, it's just gens are just, gosh, it gets real boring after a while.
Yeah, I agree. Just holding M1 or just clicking once, it's boring. I agree. So, okay, then I agree with your points. And I also agree that if they show the intention that they wanted you to have a bad time, then succeed. And then you're right saying that the gameplay itself is not toxic. All right, I'll agree with you on that. For that, yes, for the bully squad and the BM. Yeah, the only BM I will consider toxic is one the example I gave before, where the killer will literally just down you and stand over your body until you bleed out.
Yeah,
that's probably the only example I think can come up.
I agree. I think that's the closest thing to gameplay that I would consider riding the line of toxicity, because I don't really I mean, I don't know what other reason you would have to do that. Unless the only thing I can think of is if that survivor was a huge nuisance to you and you're trying to get back at them or something. But if you just go into a match at 5 gens and then you just want to bleed somebody out, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
no, in that scenario, it's like the killer straight up coming to survivor. Like for example, Billy. Billy go into the trail, get in a snipe at 5 gen, and just stand over the body to prevent survivor from playing the game and getting picked up. The whole game.
yeah, I mean, to me, it's all about. Part of it is personal preference too. Like, I've been bled out a million times, and I just don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, it can be boring, but the thing is too is if people do that sort of thing, it's if they are doing it for a reaction, then it's best to not. So if I ever get bled out, I listen to music. I'll put on YouTube videos. I'll talk to chat or whatever it is I'm doing, and. But yeah, again, it's all about intent. I think if your intention is to go in and make somebody have a miserable time, and that's all you care about, that's a toxic mentality to have. If your intention is to go in there and be fun and goofy and do something, you know, that's different. I don't think that's toxic, and it's the intent.
Yeah,
So I think we agree.
But yes, I agree on that. I maybe just kind of misunderstood the whole question, where intent and gameplay were kind of separate things.
Mhm.
But then I agree with you, and it also depends on the experience and what you encounter into the game. Because for example, that's based on my personal experience. When Aurelia came out, I just kept encountering people. I mean, when I say people, killers that will just come to me at 5 gens and bleed me out. Well, I don't really care. Like you said, I'm like you. If I'm being bled out, I stream also in my personal time. I'll literally just put something else on screen, like playing Words with chat or do another game or whatever, just to pass the time. And then the
Yeah.
DBD is in the background. I don't give a reaction. But I still think, even if it doesn't impact me, it prevents me from playing the game, because I literally cannot play the game. The killer is just making me bleed out and preventing anyone from picking me up.
Mhm.
I still think that's kind of toxic. That's the only scenario where I keep saying it, but that's the only scenario where I will think
That's
that's
fair.
toxic, because you target a specific survivor, like for Aurelia for transphobic reason, even more when I have my charms on.
Oh, that's totally. I mean, again, there's 100% intent there. Like if you're tunneling somebody because they have a pride charm, like yeah, that's that's you intentionally
Yeah.
doing it because you hate a specific group of people. That is extremely toxic. But that's because the intent is there, right? So
Yes.
so yeah, we are completely on the same page. I am with you.
Okay. Yeah.
What was
then
the
perfect?
yeah.
That point is perfect.
What was the other one again?
DBD is not survival sided.
Okay.
And I heard some of your points. I couldn't hear everything, but at some point I had to go. But I heard some previous debates you had with other people that came on here and had wonderful conversation with you. And also, I just want to know that I agree DBD is not to work, and Darth Vader should fit in DBD. I completely agree with those points. I just wanted to write it down.
Okay.
So I think that DBD is survival sided for 3 reasons. You said at some point during another of your debates that when you look at DBD and you want to know which side it decided or not, you look at the higher, the higher levels. You take the strongest versus the strongest. And while you are right that if you, for example, take a Blight for slowdown, take Momo for example, he has the highest win streak I think recorded, which is over 1,900. I don't remember the exact number. I agree. If you just take numbers like this, you can say DBD is killer sided. But if you also look at the highest level, which is, in my opinion, DBD comp, because they try to actually balance the game. If you look at what the survivor have to play around, so much perks, so much mechanics are removed from the survivor side because they try to make both sides have a chance. They try to remove as much as possible the variable, the energy most of the time of perks that makes a side have an unfair advantage. Like for example, I will give an example. For like every league, every tournament have their own balancing. Like everyone has their own balancing. For example, Billy, Blight, Nurse won't have pen raise because it's a good perk. And almost every balancing I've seen only allows one perk for each survivor. I mean that they can't have double perks. 2 survivor can have will make it, 2 survivor can have DS, 2 DH, etc. etc. So just the fact they limit to 16 unique perk And against weaker killer, they completely remove some exhaustion, some anti-tunnel, some healing perks. For example, a killer I know well is Dredge. Against Dredge, you have a lot of healing perks that are banned to actually show that you have to use your actual mechanical skill in the game and your game sense to win, because they don't want you to rely on those perks. That's also why I kind of disagreed on the other point with like Crush Pet Iron 2 problem. But then I had you explaining, so it's just a misunderstanding. But just to say that if you look at what we can consider some of the best players in the game, like Nightlight, like Zuka, like a lot of wonderful players that play in DBD comp, every time a survivor team will go against a killer, the survivors will be the side with the most things removed or more thing not allowed to play, because it is so strong. Like another way I like to look at it is that, yes, again, if you take just the number, you can say DBD killer sided, but also if you just look at objectively both sides, which side has the strongest stuff, if you make a Swift with 4 survivors, they can beat 95% of the killer if they just take the 4 strongest loadouts. While a killer, you will have to use the top 3 killers to have a chance to beat 95% of survivors. That's how I see it.
So for me, I've heard everything that you've said. I have actually debated on in previous debates. People have brought up this point of comp and the fact that there has to be so many limitations. I have a very, very difficult time trying to give like a balance verdict based on a custom match where both sides have like extra rules, whether what they can and can't. I think if we're talking about the game and which side favors which, I think that you kind of have to not have all those rules and stuff. You just have to go what is most successful or what is more consistent in regular DBD. And the way that I look at it, and it should be this, I to me it should be this simple, is if survivors are so strong and have so many strong perks that they have to limit that many perks, then that should mean, theoretically, that a 4-man comp Swift should be able to go into pub lobbies with no restrictions, any perks they want, any items they want, anything they want, full comms, everything. And they should be able to go on insane win streaks if they are the true power role. But they don't. And that's what I don't get, is why can't a 4-man comp Swift go into pub lobbies against just random killers, random builds, and why can't they win 500 matches in a row?
I have an answer to that because I thought a lot about it. I had that argument before. When I'm gonna take Momo as an example again, if you allow me. Momo has a high-end win streak again. Momo only has to master Blight. He only has to master Blight, he only has to master Hack Tech, he only has to master maps layout, and he use almost the same build every time. So he knows his pack. Survival packs that he go against are mostly the same. He go against Light, he go against DS, DH, like he knows them all at some point. Well, if you look at survivors, first of all, there are 4 of them. So you need all 4 of them at the highest level. You need all 4 of them locked in and they can't make a single mistake or they can doom the team. Because most of the time, escape 3, you need 3 or 4 escapes. If you only escape 2, it ruins the win streak. Whereas some rules for killers, if you kill 2 people, that's a draw and you continue the win streak. Sometimes you have to kill 3.
No, that's silly. I strongly disagree with that. If you get anytime I've attempted a streak, 2K is the end of the streak. If you don't win, then you shouldn't continue the win streak. I think that's a
Oh, that just how some people do it. But yes, I agree. You need 3 people to continue the win streak. So how you see it is that if you have Momo on Blight, he knows his skill perfectly. He's arguably one of the best Blight out there. So he only has to learn the counterplay to the basic Blight looping, like what Survivor will do against Black in loops, and he has to learn what to do against those specs. You have to learn to predict if Survivor is gonna have life, when it's landing, dead out. But at some point, at his level, he only sees the same thing, so he has to basically learn what 20 perks does. Compared to Survivors, they have to be, so as I said, 4 of them have to be locked in at all time, even without limitations. That's kind of hard. It's hard to have 4 people just always be at the top level for hours straight to get to win streak. And at the same time, they have to go against, I don't remember the exact amount of killers, but more than 40 killers in the game with thousands of add-ons combination possible. And at the same time, I said again, one mistake from one server. For example, they go against the Trapper, which is arguably one of the weakest killers in the game. If by mistake, because that can happen, one of them step into a trap or is found near basements, it's over. If it's 4 gens left, the game is over. Unless they have using Wiki, but that's not the case. Because someone will die very early, or they'll have to trade a lot to get that person out of basement. And if the Trapper plays the trap well and plays on basement well as a basement build, it's most of the time 1 or 2 kill guaranteed, which can end the streak. As stupid as it sounds, it can end the streak. And so you have to have 4 people that can that have to learn the contemplate to more than 45 killers, if I remember correctly. Don't count me on that. 40 to 45 killers. To learn all the possible add-ons and perks, because killers compared to survivors have way more different metas. For example, you're not going to, most of the time, you're not going to have the same perk on Blight that you have on Trappers, that you have on Unknown, that you have on Huntress.
Is it okay if I interrupt for just a second?
Yes, sorry.
No, it's okay, because I totally understand the point that you're saying. And I guess my question would be, if it's easier for a killer to go on a win streak because of build predictability, less things. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you're only one person, right? It's easier for a killer because you don't have to rely on everybody else being locked in. You don't have to worry about as many perks, as many add-ons, all these things. So, if it's much easier for killers to go on these insane streaks, and it's much harder for survivors to lock in, and it's easier for survivors to make mistakes, even against killers like Trapper, then I guess that's where I find it hard to believe that the game is survivor-sided. Because if it's easier for survivors to lose a match, if it's harder for survivors to prepare for matches, if it's harder for a team of survivors to be fully locked in and firing on all cylinders, all that tells me is that it's easier for killer. And if you're telling me that it's easier for killer to win 2,000 games in a row than it is for survivor, because there's a million other things that survivors have to worry about and account for, and it's way easier to make mistakes and easier to fumble and easier to snowball, then that tells me that it's harder on survivor. And that tells me that the game leans killer. Like that's what you're, that to me, that's what you're telling me. Like like that's what it seems like.
So no, I was going to add 2 things. While yes, it can seem that way, you also have to take into account that I keep using Momo as an example, but for example, Momo goes against people that are nowhere the level of good players. Like, its average survival level is sadly very low, and I'm very sad to say it, but anytime you go in solo queue, you can see it. You can have a Dwight that for some reason in lobby 200 hours hiding into a locker. You have a Sable doing invocation. It's, it's cliche, but it's here. It exists. No matter what your MMR is, you can't even see your MMR, so that's not even an argument. But you could be at any amount of hours, no matter how good you are at the game, if you go solo queue, which is what Momo going against the most, your chance to win are much lesser, and that's a solo queue issue. That's not survival issue. While you look at the survival win streak, most of the time they go against killer like that knows the killers, that actually main the killers, that are very good on the killers. We could see, I think one of the win streak was ended by Springtrap and by a Trapper. I thought also that's last time, which I consider not very good killer in most tier lists. That's another debate. So what I'm trying to say is that survival win streak are technically easier. Like, if you just take one game, survivor are going to have an easier time most of the time, because with their stack loadout with no limitations, they are going to have an easier game than the killer. But when you just getting that many wins in a row is harder for survivor, because at the end, at some point, they are just going to face so many killer players that actually, like, the average level of the killer players are going to face is just way higher than what, again, Momo face on average. If Momo was facing constantly full four-man swift with no limit, like the comp, like for example, you said it, we take a comp from comp squad, 4 people with no limitation. If Momo was constantly going against them, there is no possible world where it could reach 2000 wins, simply because there is too much different thing to take into account. Survivors, I said it, they have to take into account all the killers, but at the same time, the killers have to take into account for the maps. When survivor and comms are always going to have an advantage over the killer, because most of the times they are callouts for the maps ready, they know all the layouts because they're good at the game, and sometimes maybe the killer player is going to be playing on a map that is not at the advantage, like Blight on Larry's, like Billy on RPG, like all those kinds of things that can make the game for the killer harder. And if you just take one game out of all the games they play for the win streak, Survivor will have it easier. That's why the killer can reach that high win streak, because the average level of Survivor is so low. It's nowhere near the 4-man squad that we are making to have the Survivor win streak.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's hard to know. I mean, there's no way to know like what every skill level for every team is, and I guess I base my opinion based on, like, I mean, you heard it. Like, it's based on the kill rates that I see everybody get. It's based on my own kill rates, and I'm not even that good at the game. It's based on, like, I haven't seen anything, and I can't look at, like, I can't look at comp with restrictive rules and things like that to sway me into thinking the game in general is sided one way or the other when it comes to. The only thing that would be very interesting to me would be if somebody like Momo could play against a comp Swift with 0 limitations with a random map RNG, completely 0 limitations, and play like 20, 30, 40 matches in a row. And I want to know who has the higher win rate. Like, that could be something maybe that could be interesting. But as of right now, every bit of data, every bit of anything that I have seen with my own eyes and that I've experienced in my own matches based on my own data that I get myself, it is all leaning killer. So I would feel wrong and silly if I were to say that the game is survivor-sided when every single piece of data, every number, everything that I see with my eyes points the other direction. It would be, I would basically have to assume it's survivor-sided or take it completely based on somebody else's word or based on clear or just clear hypotheticals. That's it. I can't do that.
Yeah, I just have one problem with the way you see like how the game is not survivor-sided, is that you take the top 0.01%. Like Momo is unique. You have almost no one as good as Momo. You have maybe 10 Blight player, that assuming, but like Momo is like the top of Blight players. He's very, very good. And so I see it as if you were taking the top fortune in the world and you were saying, oh, so everyone is rich, because you take the average fortune and you see that because for example, one person has $1 billion and 3 other people have $100, the average money they have is going to be high because of that one person with $1 billion. But when you look at all the other and the average, it's going to be like, if you look at specifically every player, they never reach Momo's results.
By the way, the only reason I don't use Momo as an example because I think everybody is that level. And I only use Momo when comparing Momo to the top survivors. I don't compare Momo to average killers. I don't compare Momo to average survivors. I'm comparing Momo to survivors that are on his level. I think he wins more often than he loses. I think most of these people, who killer mains, whatever, who play people on their level, win more often than they lose. And I think when you look at average kill rate percentages that behavior releases, that is for the entire game, they are never below like 60% from what I see. They are usually like anywhere between 55-65% is like the range for all killers if you were to average every killer's kill rates. That's from every MMR. And again, I'm using that data because that's the only data you can find to look at, is the data that Behavior gives us from what they record. And if they tell us that average kill rates between all killers ranges between 55 to 65%, let's just say, then that leans killer across the board, all MMRs. That's not talking about the top. That's not talking about the bottom. That's talking about everybody. I like to use everybody as an example. And when I use myself as an example, I'm talking about an average player. I mean, yes, I do have a lot of hours in the game, but I play on controller. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not very good. I'm not even close to comp. Like, I am a very average. In terms of my skill level, I'm very average. And I can easily, I mean, my overall win rate is like 75%. Obviously, I meme around a lot. I play Basement Bubba. There's games where survivors get very easy escapes because I'm just standing still with Insidious. But either way, like, my kill rate is in the 70%, and I'm a very average player. So again, I don't just use Momo as a baseline. I use that when I'm talking about the top. But even when I look at numbers from the average, to me, the numbers still lean killer. And I don't see any numbers or any data with my eyes that point to the game leaning survivor. I do not see it. I haven't seen it anywhere.
So I agree with that. Completely agree with the data. I've seen it as well. I love data. I love when Behavior publishes the numbers, you know, the average IMM killer rate, 69% free G, etc. etc. I have one problem, is that not with the data, sorry, but just with the whole TBD is or is not survival sided, is that even if the average like kill rate for everyone is above 60, sometimes for at least 60% from what I remember, maybe some killers are below it, but they try to fix it afterward. Is that when you look at what each side has available, even if that's not taking the top player in mind, even if you take an average team with an average killer, I think it's hard to just say that the game is killer sided when a full 4-man squad, even if it's average players, 4-man squad could have the best loadout possible. If they go against the pig, what's the big pig gonna do compared to what the blight gonna do? The blight's gonna roll over them, no problem. Maybe the game in this specific match is going to be killer sided because the blight is going to have, for example, Fractured Chop or Blood Lodge, and so it's have a good
See,
map.
but what you're doing though is you're listing off multiple scenarios. You're listing off a scenario where you could have a really good blight going against solo queue, and that's obviously the blight's going to mop the floor with them. And then you list off a scenario where you have a solo queue, or sorry, you have a incredibly good survivors, or even just average survivors with great loadouts against a pig, and maybe they dominate that pig. You are listing off multiple scenarios, but this data that we have accounts for all scenarios, all killers, and it still leans killer. And I don't necessarily, like, when I say the game is leans killer, I don't mean by a lot, but I don't think that the game is survivor-sided because there's no data to point to it. Can there be scenarios where the survivors have an advantage? Absolutely. The same way that there could be matches where the killer absolutely has an advantage. A blight on Dead Dog Saloon against solo, yeah, blight gets a free win. Oh, you have a comp Swift or even an average 4-man Swift with meta perks on Bad and Preschool against a Wraith, yeah, like the Wraith is at a clear disadvantage there. That happens on both sides. Both sides are going to have bad RNG go their way, but when you look at the numbers and you look at what emerges and you look at people's kill rates and stuff, it still averages out to be leaning killer. Even with all of those scenarios being on the table, because when you look at data for the entire game for every killer, that accounts for all of those scenarios because it's every player. So that accounts for the sweats, that accounts for the average, that accounts for the new, and it leans killer. So again, if there was data or something that I could see that shows me that it leans survivor, I would believe it. But if my matches that I play lean killer, all the matches that I watch other people play lean killer, and the data itself leans killer, then I have nothing to look at that would sway me or persuade me to think the game leans survivor if I can't see it. That's all I'm trying to say. Like, there's nothing that shows me that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, technically I can't argue against that because I don't have any data from Behavior to tell me, oh no, actually the game is percentage killer sided. But I think, and that's assuming, I understand that that's assuming, but I think that the data behavior published, it's kind of weighted by the solo queue. Like majority of players solo queue, which like this is how I see the game. Killer has an advantage of for solo queue and bad Swift or like groups that are not full. And then good Swift and good four-man squad have advantage over killers. That's how I see it. Because if like I know that scenario that assuming that the stats are being kind of how can I say it, like poisoned by solo queue because they die a lot more than groups.
I mean, if I look at this, this is an older list, but the world record twin streak that I see from Moth is 879 games. The clown streak was 412. Onryo from Willie is 409. Obviously, Super Elf is over 1,000. Like, we're looking at all these, and obviously, in those matches, there's no way that you can play 879 matches without getting a good handful of teams. Doesn't have to be comp, but competent survivors that are on a team with good perks. There's no way you play 879 matches with twins and don't get that. There's no way that you play 412 matches with clown without seeing that. And the point is that those killers are able to overcome those scenarios more often than they're not. Yes, of course, a lot of those wins are going to be against solo queue, absolutely. But again, you can't. I refuse to believe that you can play nearly 900 matches with twins and not have a good handful of teams in there when you're winning that many matches in a row, or 400 matches with clown, or 400 matches with Onryo, 380 with Wesker. 380, that's still higher than any survivor streak that's out there. Again, yes, a lot of it's solo queue, but I guarantee you these people are still beating really good teams as well. And I just have to, if you look across the board, like, yes, there's solo queue, yes, there's teams, but across the board, it leans killer to me. Like, from what I see, it's not overly killer-sided. Like, the killer doesn't need to be nerfed, but I don't think it's survivor-sided because nothing tells me that.
I just have one thing to say about the win streak is that I agree completely that the numbers are going in favor of killers, and that also I understand that you're not saying the game is completely killer-sided. The only problem I have with win streak once again is that there are the top players of that specific killer. Like Willie is probably one of the best Sadako. I don't know who has the Wesker win streak, but that's same. That probably just one player in don't know how many that can actually get to win streak. So it's specific case. That doesn't mean everyone on that specific can get as high as it is. Whereas Survivor, it's much easier to get a high. Like for example, I'll take my personal experience. I tried to do a win streak with Xenomorph, which used to be my one trick. I didn't get a result as high as I got with my 4-man that I just got in 5 minutes. Because of how easy it's just to stack 16 perks. You just stack 16 perks, you get communication, and you can, that's what I said at the beginning, you can already beat 95% of the killer you face until you face that one killer that is maybe going for another win streak, and that is going to beat you because they play the game very, very well.
And again, maybe you're right, and maybe that's the case, but all I can do is look at how killer players perform, how I perform in my killer games, and then look at the data. And the only way that I could think or believe that it leans survivor is if I were to see that, or if I were to be presented with something. But most of the time, I'm presented with either hypotheticals or what ifs or the comp argument, which I just can't look at that when it's all custom, custom matches, custom rules. Like I can't. I think that's not really relevant. In not totally irrelevant, but I don't think it's the be all end all in whether the game as a whole favors a side. So until I can see some kind of maybe an experiment where
that's what I was gonna say. What if we made like, I understand your point. There's no data to support what I'm saying, and unless my like except for my personal experience and what I've seen. So if we got like good killer players like Momo, the people that own the win streak records, and we make them play against top Swift, like top teams with no limitation, if the survivors get higher escape rates and kill rates, would you then consider the game to be survivor sided? For example, if they play 50 games against each other, like for each killer, for example, you have one of the best teams, or Eternal, or Elysium, or Invictus. If they play 50 games against I don't know, the person that has the clone win streak, for example, if they play 50 games against that clone player, or one of the best clone player, regardless, and if they win 40 times, well, like, and by win I mean
I think
3 escapes.
Yeah, I think yes. I think seeing experiments like that would be more compelling than hypotheticals, and I would love for people to do experiments like that. That could be really interesting, and I would be very interested to see the results of that. And I think you would too, because you're somebody who loves data. The problem is that nobody does experiments like this. One, because it's time consuming; it's hard to find the people to do it. So instead, we're just kind of left with hypotheticals or the data that we actually do have, which again all leans killer. So I can't. I don't. To me, here's my main thing, and I've said this before. I main killer. I play a ton of Survivor too. I probably like 55 killer, 45 Survivor. But again, my kill rate is in the 70s with killer. My escape rate as Survivor's in the 40s. When I tried doing Swift streaks with my mods. The highest we ever got to was 10. We're all average Survivors. We're not comp, but we got to 10. And we died so much. Like it was not. It's not. We're all on comms and everything too. But and we're not comp though, and you shouldn't expect that, right? Because that's the 0.001%. But we all have hundreds, if not thousands, of hours in the game, and we still couldn't win more than 10 games in a row. And meanwhile, my killer games are successful. And when I look at any of my friends or other content creators playing killer, the majority of their games are successful. So I have to go based on what I see and based on what I experience. It would be silly for me to, in my opinion, it would be silly for me, myself, to say the game is survivor-sided when everything that I experience and everything that I see with my eyes says the opposite. So I would have to see it with my eyes, is what I'm saying. Or experience it. Like if I started losing just, a bunch of my killer games. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we will need an experiment, but that's
I would love
also-
that. I hope somebody does
Yeah,
it.
yes, I would love to maybe assist. I don't know, but that's also what I dislike about using the stats. For example, like even mine, because again, the average level of survivor I face, and I see people face, not only me, but also people I watch, is really, really, really bad. Like you
that's
have
the
people
thing is
disconnecting
but you
or
have to-
giving up.
But you have to base it on the average because, like you said, when I use Momo as an example, you don't like that example because he's one of the top percent. So we have to base it on the
Yes.
average because otherwise we're either basing it off of really good Swifts or really good killers. And as soon as you do that, it still leans killer. Like if you base it off of really good Swifts and really good killers, the killers still perform better and more consistently. If you base it on the average, killers perform better or more consistently. If you base it on below average, I still think killers perform better and more consistently. So again, even if you break it down into sections like that, to me, it looks like it leans killer. As soon as you start mismatching them, yeah, you put the Blight against the average, it leans killer. You put the Swift against the average, yes, you know what I mean? But if you break
Yes.
it down into each individual section, high versus high, mid versus mid, low versus low, I think it's still in every category leans killer, from what I see at least.
Yes. I agree.
But at the end of the day, we both agree that it would be awesome to see an experiment where somebody did do something like that. I think it would be cool if you could find like 4 survivors with like over 1,000 over 5,000 hours and a killer with over 5,000 hours play 40 games, and then find 4 survivors with like 500 hours and find a killer with 500 hours and then let them play 40 matches. You know what I mean? And then like kind of see how each. Again, this will probably never happen because finding all these people would be so hard. But that would be that would be such an interesting thing. I think so many people would love to see the results of that because that would be really interesting.
I think that will be very, very, very interesting, and to see the result, because I think that's the only way where you could realistically actually see if the game is killer or survival sided.
Yeah, and I would love to see it.
So yeah, but just my how can I say this? The thing of why I thought, or I still think that DBD was survival sided or is
Mhm.
survival sided,
Mhm.
is that when you look at just without taking the players, when you just look at what survivors have compared to what killers have, like to me it's obvious, because survivors can stack 16 packs that will just put the killer in lose-lose situation. You could have 4 DS, 4 Dead Hard, 1 Daily, 1 Shoulders the Burden, and 3 Unbreakable. And then like every killer until the top 3 will struggle and will lose most of the games. That's
I don't
why
see. I don't
I
know. To me, it's like I see what you're saying, and I agree that a lot of matches survivors will. But the fact that you have survivors that do that and they go against killers that are playing nurse, or sorry, not nurse, that are playing clown and Onryo, even if they are the best at their killer, but you have killers running those 16 perks against killers like clown and Onryo, and they're still able to beat those teams and win 400 games in a row. That tells me that, like, just because you have 16 perks, like, you're still very beatable. It's not that hard to to overcome that. And if it was harder, then I don't think somebody would have over 400 wins on Clown, or 400 wins on Onryo, or 900 wins on Twins. I just don't think that that would be possible if it was so hard to overcome 16 perks.
to
And I'm
be
not
fair,
saying.
just to take the twin example, I don't think it's possible anymore, but that's just for the twins because of all the buffs that got healing packs and slugging packs. But that's
Yeah, who knows?
that's
But yeah,
another thing.
at the end of the day, we still disagree, and that's fine. I think we're just going based off of what we've seen, what we've experienced and stuff, and hopefully maybe one day one of these experiments will happen and we can get some better data so that we can have a better understanding, and that would be cool. Or maybe
Yes,
maybe
definitely.
behavior will start tracking data better, because I think the way that they track data isn't amazing. I think you would agree, and maybe they'll figure out a way to track it a bit more.
Yes,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
especially with the
Mhm.
websites that I mean, not recently, it's been out for a while now, but the websites they have for the stats, I think some of the stats specifically are not really accurate, especially since the abandoned feature was released.
Mhm.
Now I've seen a lot of people get, like, for Ozdava, I think everyone knows Ozdava, for example, has 15% kill rate on twins because he often will have 4-man slug and have to abandon. And the website and behavior considers them as escapes.
Oh yeah. That's silly. Yeah.
So
Well, hey, thank you so
yeah,
much for taking the time. I think we had a really
of
really
course.
good conversation, and
Yes, that was very interesting. And I will actually work on getting that experience done. I actually think I could get it done.
well, please do reach out. I would love to spectate a little bit of it and definitely see the end result. I would love that.
Of course. Definitely. Thank you so much for having me. That was very, very interesting.
Thank you for joining. I hope you have a great rest of your night.
And you too. Have a good rest of your stream.
All right, thanks. Bye. That was a good debate too.